Hey everybody, welcome to a new edition of the award-winning Talking About Cars, where it's all about everybody has a car story, including celebrities and car personalities. I'm Randy Kerdoon. Today we're at the Hollywood show here in Los Angeles, where I think you are in for a treat. Think about that car behind me. The red 1975 Ford Torino with a hockey stick stripe on the side. Look familiar? You have the iconic car from the TV show and movie Starsky and Hutch. Joining us today, actors Michael-Glaser and Antonio Fargas. And they've got some fun stories to tell. So let's catch up with Starsky and Huggy Bear as we start talking about cars. Guys, we're in the car. I know the memories go back on this.
Yeah.
Memories go back on this. You know, I always wonder, your first car experience, the first car you remember growing up, what was it?
The first car I remember?
Mm-hmm.
Jeez, that's asking a lot. I can tell you the first car I drove, I owned.
Sure.
It was a 52 Ford, nose and decked with a convertible top, and stripped of all its chrome, except for the front and rear bumper, which I painted chromium blue. And 4 on the floor, and electric doors and trunk, and I blew I blew a rod through the block within a half hour if I got it.
Really? Now, did you build it that way, or did you buy it that way?
I bought it that way. I bought it that way.
So you were a little hot rodder back when you were growing up.
Well, we were all hot rodders, you know. In the 50s, 60s, when you know, there were a lot of muscle cars around. Well, that was the beginning of it. So that was a big thing.
Is that, did somebody else have a car like that you suddenly thought,
no,
man, how cool would that be? Did you hang with it?
I was going to buy a car. I saved up my money, and I started looking, and I saw this ad, and I went and looked at the car, and I thought, oh, I'll buy that.
What was the reaction when you brought it home?
Well, I don't remember. My father probably was amused, but I don't remember any reaction. I do know that when I went off to college, my dad told me he was going to sell it, which he did.
Really?
And all my hockey equipment was in the trunk. And he never got the trunk open, so all my hockey stuff went with it.
Oh, wow. So you were a big hockey guy when you were growing up?
Not big, but you know, I was from Boston, and you played a lot of hockey in Boston, and we had a pond near us, so I played a lot of pond hockey also, and like that.
Antonio, tell me about your car.
Growing up in New York City, I didn't know anything about a car. I didn't get a license until I moved to California, and shortly after that, I got the Starsky and Hutch. And so my first car was a Toyota Corolla, lime green, and it wasn't new.
No, was it?
No, it wasn't new. Toyota Corolla.
So when you started doing the show, I assume you upgraded.
Well, yeah, I think the first car purchased, I mean, the guys, you know, they had their cars, and then they got up these BMWs, man, and I
had on the show.
Yeah, man. And then I got a Jeep Renegade. It had all the bells and whistles. It had gas cans on the back. It had a CB radio on it and all that. And it was funny because Charlie's Angels was going at the time, and I think Jacqueline Smith, she ended up getting a Renegade too. It was like, this is on. But yeah, my first car was a Toyota Corolla, and I upgraded in Starsky and Hutch to a Jeep Renegade.
So you guys, once the Starsky and Hutch money came in, you upgraded to what? You said a BMW?
Well, when I did Starsky and Hutch, at the time I was driving a Mazda. And this was the first Mazda when they first came out. They had the rotary engine.
The Wankel, yeah.
Which had tremendous torque. I mean, I went through 2 engines and they just replaced them because they were still trying to figure out how it worked. And then David got his BMW, which was, what was the color of that thing? Like copper or?
Yeah.
And
who had the Beetle?
Who had the Beetle?
Did David have a Beetle?
No.
No?
What did he drive when he first started? Do you remember?
What did he drive?
Yeah.
I don't recall. So he had a Beamer, and then I went and bought a Beamer, and we'd race each other to lunch on the Fox lot, which you don't see anybody doing that anymore.
No.
There's so many security and police there, it's ridiculous. And then after the show, I bought a 911, a Porsche, and I loved that car, and I had that car for quite a while. So, and then after the Porsche, I got an SUV. I got the Mercedes SUV, and then I had that until I had that for almost 15 years, 14 years. I drove that into the ground. It was a great car, though. Great car. And like that.
You were on record many times saying when the show first started and you got on the show and you guys were all cast, and then they told you what you'd be driving this as your police car, that this wasn't exactly your idea of an undercover cop car.
Well, obviously.
But supposedly the story is that they were looking at a Camaro at one point.
I don't know what they were looking at. David and I were called to the producer's office. He had a bungalow in the Fox lot, Aaron Spelling, and Aaron walked outside with us and he had his arm around my shoulder and he said, "I got a surprise for you." And he pointed at this car and I said, "What is that?" And he said, "Well, it's your car for the show." And I turned to David and I said, "I'm going to destroy that car." And I spent 4 years trying to destroy it. So,
how many cars did you?
We only had 2.
Really?
No, we had a lot of Bondo.
Oh.
We did a lot of repairing and everything, but there were only 2 cars, And the first year it was a bench seat, and then David kept ending up in my lap every time I took a right turn. So then they made them bucket seats, and they changed the rear end the second year, so you had a quicker, 0 to 60. You had no top end, and it was still a pig. It's just a,
Well, it was. I mean, it looked like even back then when you made a turn, it just.
Oh, it was a total. It floated and boated, and it just, it was. Then when they did the movie, they built a body. I think they probably built it out of either fiberglass or something because it was a lot lighter, and they put a big engine in it, and the tray and rear end, and it was a very powerful car. I got to drive it. In a commercial we did for the opening in New York, and then I drove it once more. We shot the film in L.A. And that car had a lot of punch to it, but I still wouldn't,
But that car you guys drove like this. It certainly looked a lot more streamlined than what David had to drive.
Well, David had an issue with the car, and rightly so. He felt like, as I did, that this car was kind of ridiculous. And so when they just tried to decide on a car for him, he said he wanted an old beat-up car, a second-hand old beat-up car, so it wouldn't attract any attention. So they delivered a car. You remember this story? They delivered it to the sound stage, and the paint job had been knocked down a little bit, but it was basically a new car. And David was kind of upset, so I found a sledgehammer and a pick. And I said, "Here, take your choice." And we went out and beat up his car for a little bit and jumped on it and like that.
That's one thing I remember is I kept thinking this car looks so underground, undercover, but it looks so new. It was a new model.
Yeah. Well, we kept trying to, David, and David didn't like this car at all either, and so we'd get into it and, do the best we could with it. But
what would you have rather had besides something like this? I mean, what did you think would have worked better?
In those days? I would have liked to have had something that was had a smaller wheelbase and didn't have a weight problem and had a very good back end and a lot of power under the hood and some nice tires and been knocked down outward appearance. So it was like, you look at it and say, it's just another car. And then when the car took off, it could outrun anything and chase anything and all of that.
You just described a Corvette or a Mustang or something like that.
Like the Mustang, although the Mustang was, the interesting thing is you look at the cars from that era and you look at the size of the steering wheels and you look at the suspensions and you look at the fact that, people that had accidents in those days, they must have had so many people that got skewered impaled on that steering column. And it's funny because, you know, you have so many memories of when you were a kid of those cars, and when you see them across the street and some other car drives by, oh, look at that Impala, or look at this, or look at that. And then you go and you stick your head and you look inside, and it's just a come down. It's like, oh my God, that's that steering wheel. It's like, you know. Remember they had the suicide knobs? I actually got into a car the other day, and the guy had a suicide knob. I said, oh, you have a suicide knob? He looked at me, what? What's a suicide knob? Well, it's, you know, that knob that you put on your steering wheel to be able to turn it.
Antonio, your car that they had for the show, I guess they just dipped into the Ford catalog? Is that what it was?
I don't know if it was an episode or whatever, but I've never really had wheels officially. So I don't even remember that.
Yeah, he was inner city. He was,
he was
snitch at the inner city.
And what was your official job on the show? I mean, I remember hearing and reading, and
Huggy Bear was a device, you know, and just like the car, it was kind of outlandish that a guy could survive more than 2 months, you know, giving tips or being seen giving tips to cops. But it was a device, so I had to have. They created many kinds of scenarios. I was a street guy. I owned a bar. I was all over the place because it was part of a formula that they thought, you know, worked, and the relationships and whatnot between us. So for me, it was always the first day. Every episode was the first day. That's how I survived.
Explain the first day.
Meaning that it was the first time that I had a relationship with these guys, so that, you know, guys would be coming out of prison or coming out of jail and finding Huggy Bear. You know, so
it would have been nice if they'd made it a more cumulative thing. Like, I'm going to get killed if you keep asking these questions. You know, and
they kept going to the well every time with the same stuff.
Yeah, and it would have been nice if we'd been able to say, you know, coerce you into things.
Right.
And
you know, have to move out of town for a couple of years.
Right, and give you a carrot at the end of a stick, or you know.
Okay, so Starsky and Hutch 2017 is going to be in a show near you. They're casting, they're trying to put the car together. If you had the say, and believe me, as a director and a writer and a producer, you know how this works. Okay, it's your choice. What do you give them as their car?
Depends what the show is. If it's a Starsky and Hutch, that kind of a show. You know, you want to give them a car, and hopefully give each of them a car if there are two partners that say something about their personality, and you know, because we all identify so much with our cars in this in America. You know, I'd give one of them a foreign car. You know, like something like you could really get a lot of mileage, comedy and dialogue wise. You know, like a Fiat. You know, or Citroën, something like that.
You'd give that to David's character, I would
Of course.
imagine.
And then I remember when Paul Newman, did he have a Volkswagen or a Cooper? And he stuck a big engine in it and everything. I remember seeing him tooling around Manhattan. Now, I always think that that's more fun. But you know, it's also the age and the era, and this is the kind of thing they were selling, and this is what Ford was making, and like that. But you know, you take a look at this car, and it's an homage to overdoing things.
Yeah.
Which is the automobile industry is basically what it was. You had the fins on the Sharks and the fins on the Impalas and the huge bonnets and the huge. I mean, everything was big, and mechanically impossible.
Antonio, what's in your garage right now?
A Fiat.
Really?
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, well, there
Fiat
you go.
500.
Yeah.
And
You fit in that?
Yeah.
You're a tall dude. I mean, come on.
Listen, I saw Charlie Sheen do that A-bar.
Right,
Fiat.
right.
At first, I got a Gucci 500, and then I said, you know what? I really want to drive that stick shift, and so I got the A-bars. And then I said, you know what? I can't drive everybody in the family and that, so I got the Fiat 500 4-door, and you know. And when the show was happening, after the Jeep Renegade, I got a Volvo.
Well, that thing will last forever.
Yeah.
Sexy, but dull.
Yeah, I thought dull was sexy.
Yeah, I was about to say that, Tony. It was a very dull sexiness.
Dull sexiness.
Paul, what's in your garage?
Oh, I drive a VW Jetta turbo diesel.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of punch to it, but it's an easy car to drive. It's, you know, I don't think I've ever been really a car hound. I like a car that rides well, that drives well, that gives you the power you need when you want to pass somebody or do whatever you want to do. But you know, and so it's a functioning car. My mother had a Beetle. She got so my father, you know, he got her a Thunderbird, and she said that was too ostentatious, so she got a Volvo. Remember the Volvo that were kind of egg shaped, or, you know, and they had 4 on the floor, big shift stick, and they had a lot of punch. And I drove that car into the ground, and so then she said, okay, and she got a black Beetle.
Oh, wow.
And my friends and I would, when they first got in the car with me, they were so mortified, because this was that age when you had big cars, that as we drove someplace, because I was the first one to get his license, so as we drove someplace, I'd look over and they'd be unscrewing everything they could find, the knobs, the buttons, the shift stick knob. It was impossible.
So if there's one car that you've had that you miss, you wish you could get back, what would it be?
I'd probably say my 911, because it was such a sweet car. You know, but I don't do that much driving anymore, so, you know, yeah, I'd say so. The Beamer was heavy. It was too heavy. I like a light car. I like a car that's quick.
Antonio?
I had a restoration project when Fiat first came into my life, and they were called Fix It Again Tonys. It was a 79. It was a 79 convertible Fiat Spider, and I cherished that car, and I fixed it up, and I fixed up the engine and all that. And I was just waiting for them to let me to pass when it was be like you know, old car where you didn't have to have it smogged, but so I had to like dismantle some of the stuff so I could get it smogged, and then, you know, kind of deal like that. But I think I'd like to have my car back.
Yeah.
Car you want. Number one car on your list of cars that you still may want to buy someday.
Oh, I'd love to have a Tesla.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Ditto. My friends got
Which one?
doesn't matter.
No, doesn't matter.
Tesla, you know, I mean, I don't think I'd want the one with the gold wing doors, because it's like, you know, you keep thinking you're going to get hit in the face with that door. But I rode in one for the first time about 3-4 months ago, and a friend of mine who I grew up with, and we all drove these kind of cars. And we got into the car, and he turned to me and said, "You ready?"
Yeah,
and I said, "What do you mean ready? What am I supposed to be ready for?" He says, "You want to put on your seatbelt?" I said, "Okay, I'll put on my seatbelt." I put on the seatbelt. And he floored it, and I just pinned me back to the seat. And holy shit. And then he hit a couple of buttons. He took his hands off the wheel. We were doing about 70 miles an hour, and he hit the switch, and the car changed lanes by itself.
Isn't that amazing how fast that goes from a standing start?
And then it passed the car and went back in that lane, and that's like,
Yeah.
so that what the Tesla represents to me is, first of all, I think Musk is one of my heroes. I mean, he's an incredible guy, and in terms of what he's been able to envision and create. I think the thing that's most attractive to me about the Tesla is that it's just the cutting edge of technology.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a big guy on pipes anymore. I don't like to hear, you know, I don't like to hear that anymore. I know when you're young and you have, you know, you're always looking for a place to put it. That, you know, that makes you feel good.
Sets off
Some of
every
those
alarm.
cars have to add the sound so that people could hear them coming.
That's a good point.
You know, because you get like, I got drove in cars and I don't know the engine is going, and I think it's off or on. It's like that thing. But,
on that vein, you know, nowadays are coming out with cars that are self-drive. Are you a fan of that or not? Or do you like
I don't think I could ever trust it.
right.
Machines do fail. People fail too, but
I
I'd
like
rather.
to have it, but I wouldn't want to trust it.
I wouldn't. We're in this world today. We are quickly becoming a mass of people that move in lockstep, and machinery and technology is only making that more and more available to people, and so you know, eventually, whatever independence you have, you won't have in a car. You won't have the ability to be able to go and do what you want to do. You know, I'm still. There's a romantic side of me that still holds with the cowboy and the Old West, and independence and individuality, even though I know it's not a thing of the future.
We do a couple of things here on our Talking About Cars podcast. It's kind of like trivia, except I'm going to ask you a trivia question about him and him about you.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, Paul, Antonio's son played in the NFL. You know that.
Yes?
Which team did he play for?
Oh, don't ask me that.
The Rams, the 49ers, or the Raiders?
Jesus, I think it was the Raiders.
Is Raiders your final answer?
Yeah.
You are correct, sir.
Yes.
Very good. Yes.
He knows something about
Very good. He knows something about you. Okay.
It's just me rummaging around in my memory to try to remember some conversations with Tony.
What show did Antonio also appear as Huggy Bear? Was it the Lego Movie, The Simpsons, or Car Wash?
As Huggy?
As Huggy.
Oh God, I have
Lego
no idea.
Movie,
I'm totally
Simpsons.
guessing. The Lego Movie.
The Simpsons, if I right?
Right, they did an episode. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's okay. That's all right.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did.
That was for you.
See, I'm helping you learn more about your
That's
co-star.
important.
And our last one for you. In I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, which cast member from Animal House was also in that movie. Dean Wormer, you remember the Animal House movie, right?
Yeah.
Dean Wormer, who was John Vernon. John Blutarski, which is
John Belushi.
John Belushi. Kent Dorfman, Stephen First.
Okay.
Which one was also in I'm Gonna Get You Sucker?
I don't know because I never saw I'm Gonna Get You Sucker.
Take a wild, educated guess because you
Belushi.
know. You're absolutely. It was John Vernon.
Yeah, Vernon.
Dean
yeah,
Wormer.
Yeah.
You know, 1 out of 3.
You never saw
isn't
my
bad.
best work.
No, I didn't. I not missed your best work. Your best work is right now.
Okay, just a few for Antonio, and I appreciate your guys' time. This is great. All right, Antonio, about Paul. What movie did Paul write, direct, and produce that starred a former NBA player? Was that player
It was
Will
go ahead.
Chamberlain, Magic Johnson, or Shaquille O'Neal?
None of those.
I believe Kazam was Shaquille O'Neal.
Okay. I thought it was.
I have to
okay.
ask, how did that happen? How did you cross paths with Shaquille O'Neal?
2 months after my first wife died, I got a phone call from friends of ours that managed him, and they asked if we were going to the All-Star game and would my son like to meet Shaquille, and I said, sure. And so, and then before they hung up, they said, by the way, did I know of any good film projects for him for the summer? I said, no, you ought to play a genie, and I hung up the phone. And then I started to think about it, and I thought up a story. And when I met him and his manager, I asked when basketball camp started again, and I figured out that I had 4 months to get a screenplay and a green light, which is ridiculous. But I was all about just getting back to work, coming back to life, and so I made it happen, with the help of a lot of people, but I made it happen, and that was that.
Wow. I've always wondered that story. I read that, I saw that on IMDb, and I went, wait a minute. And I looked it up, and I just tried to put the two pieces together.
Yeah.
That was great. All right, Antonio. Paul twice played Pear Chick in Fiddler on the Roof. So fill in the blank. If I were a rich man, diddle, deedle, diddle, diddle, deedle, deedle, diddle, dum, all day long I'd what? Be stuck on a roof? Bitty bitty bum? Or drive in my limo?
Attaboy.
Hey, very good. Congratulations. And final question for Antonio. In 1987, Paul directed Running Man, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Great film.
And it was a great film.
Thank you.
What person was not in the movie? Richard Dawson, Jesse the Body Ventura, Moon Unit Zappa, or Jim Brown? Not in the movie.
It's a trick question, Tony.
Don't give it away.
Richard Dawson.
You're going for Richard Dawson. And the answer is,
They were all in the movie.
well,
Jim Brown was in the movie.
he was in the movie. Jesse
Zappa was in the movie.
Dweezil was in the movie.
Dweezil, not Moon.
Yeah.
That was
there
the
you
trick.
go.
You knew the trick.
Well,
but
I thought
I
that's
knew
where
the
you were
trick,
going.
but I forgot the name. All I heard was Zappa. Dawson, when we finished the film, was actually the star of the movie. They made me recut it.
Really?
So that Arnold would be the star.
So he was originally the star of the movie?
No. He came out
Focus.
at the end of the movie, when you put it all together, he was the character who was most interesting and, most interesting.
Last thought. When you were driving these cars in the show, did you do most of your stunts, or did you ever want to?
I did a lot of them. Charlie Petrunia was a stunt coordinator, taught me a lot about driving, so I did a lot. Mm-hmm. I could drive the car, I couldn't do heights. All right.
I loved you guys in the movie, and toward the end, it was great to see you and David in the movie. I couldn't figure out why they didn't put you in the movie.
Neither could I.
And just for the record, did you like the movie? Aside from that,
I thought it was sensitive to what it was representing, and so in that case, yes.
did you like the movie?
I thought it was a nice compliment to
Yeah.
having done something that became iconic. So that was nice. And I like Ben and I like Owen. I didn't think that, I had lunch with Ben and I said, what kind of movie do you want to make? Do you want to try to create, you can't recreate the 70s, but can you create that relationship? Which I thought that both he and Owen were very capable of. And he said that's what they wanted, but the director fancied himself a comedy director, and he decided to do a spoof. So that was that.
Well, Michael-Glaser, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank
Antonio
you.
Fargas,
Thank
you
you
for taking the time.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Talking About Cars. Check us out on iTunes, also on YouTube, Facebook. We're right there as well. We'll have this podcast up, and we'll talk to you next
How
time.
did you find us?
Shh. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to like and comment about us on social media. It really helps out. I'm Randy Kerdoon. Join me next time as we have some fun talking about cars.